Have you ever wondered how one man's religious dissent could reshape the entire course of history? Picture Europe in the 16th century. It's a continent under the sway of the Catholic Church, a mighty entity that holds both spiritual and political power. The Church's influence permeates every aspect of life, from the highest echelons of power to the humblest village. But beneath this seemingly unshakable facade, a storm is brewing. Enter Martin Luther, a German monk with a radical idea. Luther, troubled by what he perceived as the Church's corruption and misuse of power, dared to challenge this formidable institution. He didn't just voice his concerns in private, no, he went public. His 95 Theses, a list of arguments against the Church's practices, particularly the sale of indulgences, were nailed to the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, an act that reverberated throughout Europe. Luther's theses were not just a critique of church practices, they were a call to action, a plea for reform. His words struck a chord with many, resonating with a populace that had grown disillusioned with the Church. His boldness ignited the spark of dissent that had been smoldering beneath the surface of society. And yet, Luther did not act in isolation. His actions were a reflection of the socio-political climate of the time. Europe was in a state of flux. The old order was being questioned, and new ideas were starting to take root. The ground was fertile for change, and Luther's theses were the seed. Luther's challenge to the Church's authority set off a chain of events that would come to be known as the Reformation. This wasn't just a religious dispute, it was a seismic shift that would shake the very foundations of European society. And so, the stage was set for a religious revolution that would fragment the unity of the Catholic Church and change the face of Europe forever. But what exactly was it about Luther's teachings that caused such a stir? Well, let's delve into that. Martin Luther, a German monk, had some revolutionary ideas. He didn't just question the Church's practices, he challenged some of its core beliefs. One of his fundamental teachings was the concept of justification by faith alone. This was a radical departure from the Catholic Church's belief that both faith and good works were necessary for salvation. Luther argued that faith was all that was needed. This was a profound shift in thinking. It meant that every individual could seek salvation directly through faith, without the need for the Church's intercession. This was a direct challenge to the Church's authority and its role as the gatekeeper of salvation. Another key point of Luther's teachings was his critique of indulgences. At the time, the Catholic Church sold indulgences, which were essentially pardons for sins. The Church claimed that purchasing an indulgence could reduce a sinner's time in purgatory. Luther vehemently opposed this practice. He argued that indulgences were a form of corruption, and that they undermined the true meaning of repentance. These ideas struck a chord with many people, leading to the formation of Protestantism. Various branches of Protestantism emerged, each with its own interpretation of Luther's teachings. These branches included Lutheranism, Calvinism, and Anglicanism, among others. Each branch had its own unique beliefs and practices, but they all shared a common rejection of certain Catholic doctrines. Luther's teachings didn't just create a new religious movement, they sparked a seismic shift in the religious, political, and social landscape of Europe. His ideas challenged the authority of the Catholic Church, leading to conflicts and eventually to the splintering of Western Christianity. Luther's ideas were more than just religious doctrines, they were the seeds of a movement that would grow into a force capable of challenging the might of the Catholic Church. So, how did the Catholic Church respond to this threat to its supremacy? Well, with the Protestant Reformation shaking the very foundations of the Catholic Church, the Church did what any threatened institution would do. It fought back. This fight took the form of a period known as the Counter-Reformation, a time of intense self-examination, reform, and expansion. Central to the Counter-Reformation was the Council of Trent. Convened in the mid-16th century, the Council of Trent was a critical turning point. It was a gathering of high-ranking church officials who sought to address the criticisms leveled by the Protestants. The council reaffirmed traditional Catholic teachings in opposition to Protestant beliefs, but it also initiated significant reforms. It tackled issues like the sale of indulgences, which had been a major point of contention for Martin Luther. It also established seminaries to educate priests, a move aimed at addressing concerns about the moral and intellectual quality of the clergy. But the Counter-Reformation wasn't just about reforming the Church from within, it was also about countering the spread of Protestantism. Enter the Jesuit order, founded by St. Ignatius of Loyola. The Jesuits became the spearhead of the Counter-Reformation, taking on roles as missionaries, educators, and scholars. They were dedicated to the defense of Catholicism, often operating in areas where Protestantism was gaining ground. Their efforts helped to regain territories for the Church, and they established schools and universities across Europe, shaping the minds of future generations. The Counter-Reformation was a complex and multifaceted response to the challenges the Catholic Church faced during the Reformation. It was a time of introspection, reform, and action, with the Church striving to address its shortcomings while also fighting to defend its position. This period reshaped the Catholic Church and had profound effects on the course of European history. The Counter-Reformation was the Catholic Church's way of saying, "Not so fast, Protestantism." But the Reformation wasn't just a religious squabble, it had far-reaching implications for the whole of Europe, didn't it? Indeed, the ripples of the Reformation extended well beyond the church walls, causing dramatic shifts in the political and social landscapes of Europe. The religious wars that erupted in its wake, for instance, were not just about faith, but also about power and control. The 30 Years' War, one of the most destructive conflicts in European history, was largely fueled by the tensions between Protestants and Catholics. This war alone claimed the lives of nearly 8 million people, a grim testament to the Reformation's far-reaching impact. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. The Reformation also contributed to the rise of nation-states. As the Catholic Church's influence waned, monarchs and princes seized the opportunity to consolidate their power. They started to govern in their own right, rather than as vassals of the Pope, leading to the emergence of more centralized, powerful states. This shift laid the groundwork for the modern nation-state, a concept we're all familiar with today. And let's not forget about the cultural shifts. The Reformation brought about significant changes in art and culture. The Protestant emphasis on individual interpretation of the Bible promoted literacy and education. This led to an increase in the production of books and the spread of ideas, paving the way for the Enlightenment. Moreover, the change in religious thought also impacted the arts. Protestant churches, rejecting the ornate decorations of Catholic cathedrals, favored simpler designs. This shift towards simplicity can be seen in the art and architecture of the time, shaping the aesthetic sensibilities of entire generations. The Reformation, then, was not only a religious revolution but also a social and political one. It altered the course of European history, shaping the continent as we know it today. The effects of these seismic shifts can still be felt, centuries later, in our politics, culture, and everyday life. So, what legacy did the Reformation leave behind? Let's delve deeper. It's undeniable that one of the most enduring outcomes of the Reformation is the lasting split between Catholicism and Protestantism. This theological divide continues to shape the religious landscape of the globe even today, centuries after Martin Luther famously nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church. But the Reformation's legacy extends far beyond religious schism. It was a catalyst for the rise of religious tolerance. In a world where religious uniformity had been the norm, the Reformation's splintering effect created a new paradigm. It introduced the concept of diversity in faith, a revolutionary idea that paved the way for freedom of religion, a cherished principle in many societies. Furthermore, the Reformation had a profound influence on modern democracy and individualism. The Protestant emphasis on the individual's direct relationship with God, unmediated by priests or the Church, fueled a respect for individual conscience and freedom. This principle, when extrapolated to the political sphere, contributed significantly to the development of democratic ideals. The Reformation also promoted literacy and education. The Protestant insistence on reading the Bible in the vernacular led to a surge in literacy rates and the spread of printing technology. This democratization of knowledge was a key factor in the subsequent Enlightenment period. Perhaps most importantly, the Reformation demonstrated the power of ideas and the courage to stand up for them. It showed that individuals armed with conviction and courage can challenge established norms and effect profound change. It underscored the potential of the human spirit to question, to seek truth, and to strive for a better world. The echoes of the Reformation can still be heard in our world today, a testament to the power of ideas and the courage to stand up for them. The Reformation was not just a moment in history but a seismic shift that continues to resonate, shaping and influencing our world in myriad ways.